911 operators of Reddit. What are some of the funniest things someone has called in for? I once called 911 because I cut my finger and wanted to talk to my mom, who was a dispatcher. I called crying asking to talk to her by name. She was more pissed at my dad for not waking up when I tried to go to him first, haha. Numerous calls where someone has handcuffed themselves to a significant other during coitus and lost the key. If it's not busy, this seems to draw most available officers. Not me but a coworker. A person was pleasuring themselves with the handle of a scissors and it got stuck. A man requiring extrication from an Under Armour insulated shirt. His shoulder popped out of the socket while he was pulling it on, it was halfway on, halfway off and his arm was locked and dislocated. Edited to add, "So you don't think I'm awful?" He was laughing, and said, "I would have driven myself to the hospital but I would have had to drive with my arm out the window." I don't know if this counts as funny. I'm from a small town. Everyone knows everyone. My Uncle Jim is a cop. All the dispatchers and first responders know my grandma pretty well. One day, my uncle was working on something electrical in the basement. He was shocked. He was unconscious, but he ended up being fine. My grandma called 911, and screamed into the phone, "V. It's Kate. Jimmy's been shocked." What V, the dispatcher, heard was, "Jimmy's been shot." Every single police officer, sheriff's deputy, EMS, paramedic, firefighter, and park ranger in town arrived at my grandma's house. My uncle was super confused and embarrassed. I was a 911 dispatcher years ago but had two call-specific calls that still make me laugh. One, a frazzled mother called cause her 6-year-old had gotten into the roof and she couldn't get him down. She kept screaming about how we need to hurry. Not because she was worried he would get hurt, but because he had done the before and last time he peed in the air vents. 2. This was before weed was legal in my state, but a college kid called asking for an ambulance. He was super worried that he was having an allergic reaction to the weed he just smoked. When asked about his symptoms he said, "I just can't stop eating Cheetos." I briefly worked as a 911 operator. When someone called on the non-emergency line we always answered the same way, "Blank police and fire, this is a recorded line. How can I help you?" We get a call on that line. I answer as usual and a very inebriated-sounding woman asks the following. Hypothetically speaking, if my boyfriend had a few grams of cocaine and I called the police to tell them about it, would either of us get into any trouble? "Ma'am, you're calling the police on a recorded line." "I know, but what does the law say?" "I don't know, ma'am. I'm not a police officer. Would you like me to send one?" "Yes, please." She gives me her address. An officer responded but there were no arrests. That one had me scratching my head. My dad used to be in charge of the 911 call center. One particular story I remember was in like '09, some guy called asking how much weed he could have in his car while driving through the state. They went back and forth for maybe 20 minutes of the guy repeating and rephrasing the question and my dad just responding, "None." My sister once called because she wanted to know who would be on the other end of the line. I couldn't hear what the person said but I heard my sister's parts of the convo. "Sister. Hello? Who's this? Oh." Then she hung up on the operator. They ended up calling back and my dad picked up and had to explain that his daughter was just being curious. When I was a fire dispatcher, I had to send a squad to remove a cock ring. So there's that. Not me but my wife, who works both as a secretary for a fire department and as a volunteer firefighter, EMT. A lady calls asking if she can donate a building for a training burn-in. After asking questions she finds out it's not a building but an RV. More questions. It's not her RV, it was abandoned on her property. Just a few more questions. It's not exactly abandoned. It's her ex-husband's RV. And he's living in it and won't leave. She wants my wife's fire department to burn it down. Wife's fire department declined. Actual 911 operator here. So far the silliest was a guy who called, all concerned about the number of birds flying around because there was an airshow nearby and he was worried the planes would hit the birds. Not an operator, but I have to share my experience. The area code in my city is one number away from being 911. So when I was 6 and trying to call my dad from the home phone, you can imagine my surprise when I heard, 911, what's your emergency? Turns out I got the area code wrong and it called the police instead. And my 6-year-old shocked brain decided it would be a good idea to just hang up. 20 minutes later, I hear my aunt, who was in a room close to the front yard, yell, "Why are the cops here?" My parents had to explain to the police what was going on, and the cops gave me the friendly reminder to not hang up when you accidentally call the police. My parents, however, weren't as forgiving. A guy calls my agency every so often talking about murdering gummy bear dinosaurs and something about strawberry tampons. Edit. Thanks for the awards, kind strangers. If I remember any more, I'll be sure to share. I am not a dispatcher. But when I was a child and like 6, I called the police from the home phone and asked if they would come play with me because I didn't have friends. So they showed up, because they have to respond, and I got a lecture from the police and my military parents about the seriousness of calling 911. I was the EMT who pulled the printout that just said, "Off-duty PD call in." Man gave name, God Jehovah Moped. The man was surprisingly lucid and coherent. That's also not his legal name. I asked. The Spirit gave it to him that morning and he was really excited to share it with everyone. Not a 911 operator, but during residency they had a shadow one during my EMS month. This woman called 911 3 times in 10 minutes for a service animal in a mall. He's here staring at me. No, I don't care that he's helping. He just licked his nuts. Lady called in because she thought Willie Nelson was having a cardiac arrest in her trailer, and she needed an ambulance. I started giving her CPR instructions, and come to find out when paramedics got there, she was doing compressions on the couch cushions. A guy called in because his dog had bitten a seagull and was now acting strange. He demanded we find the bird, capture it, and test it for rabies. The whole circumstances were vague and he was unwilling to listen to reasonable advice, like that birds can't carry rabies. He had the audacity to file a complaint when informed we would not be doing what he wanted. A friend had cops called on him cause he was doing liquid at the C train station. It's a form of dancing at raves where your hands seem to look like liquid. The person who called the cops was scared it was satanic or something. Heard secondhand but escaped farm animals, especially horses. It's a small town. Not an operator, but I heard a call once where a woman called 911 because there was a baby lizard in her computer. I just certified as a call taker and got mandated for overtime, of course, on my first shift. Policy was if someone insisted they saw something, we take it as face value and enter the call. Well, this lady called me just after midnight and swore she saw a chupacabra on the west side of Orlando and insisted in an officer doing an area check. Not too long after that, a coworker was in on his night off and left the building. He called 2 minutes later saying he saw a kangaroo hopping down the street. I can't make this shit up. There are funny calls that come in all the time. I talked to a pizza delivery guy who couldn't reach his destination because a defiant chicken was standing in the middle of the road. I stayed with him on the phone as he pleaded with it to finally move along. Truly a chicken crossing the road moment. Another time I took a call where a guy insisted he was in an argument with a man dressed as a giant Pepsi bottle. He said the man in the Pepsi suit had stolen his debit card and refused to give it back. Upon arrival, the officers told me he was high as shit and arguing with a vending machine. Glass bottle in rectum. One time a guy called in while I was training and stated he had cut his penis. When I answered, "You cut your penis?" The trainer smacked me on the arm and told me he said he'd cut his hand. She looked at me like the biggest pervert. Then 10 seconds later into the conversation he says, "Yeah, I was trying on a rubber that was too small and I had to cut it off, so I cut right into my penis." She almost couldn't stop herself from laughing. When I was a kid I called 911 to tell the operator about my day at school and that I had no friends to tell. The officers showed up. Well, they have to. But they showed up, and after a small lecture about the seriousness of calling 911 they sat down with me and let me tell them all about my day at school and what I did that day and blah blah. I always thought it was super sweet that they hung back. I was probably about 7 at the time. To this day one of the officers still remembers me. I'm 23 now. I have a fun story. My brother is a 911 operator in the area where we live. One day I was at the store with my son and I gave him my phone to play with. Well, he accidentally called 911 and my brother coincidentally is the one who got the call. I guess my son just wanted to talk to his uncle that day lol. I called 911 today to report a brush fire near downtown Seattle. Here is the call in its entirety. Ring. Tired-sounding dispatcher. 911. Are you calling to report the brush fire on I-5 by the 520 bridge exit? Me. Yes. Tired-sounding dispatcher. We got it. Click. I was kinda impressed, to be honest. I was on a mobile phone, but he had to have had a general pin on my location. I had a kid calling from a non-service phone. It's a phone that no longer has a subscription attached to it. Although you can't call anyone else, it can still be used to call 911. The problem is that it's untraceable and this little bastard knew it. Me. 911, where's your emergency? Him. What's up, fuckface? Me. 911, where's your emergency? Him. What's up, fuckface? Me. 911, where's your emergency? Him. What's up, fuckface? Finally, I said, we have triangulated your position. The police are on the way. After a brief silence, he said, no, they ain't. Fuckface. When I worked at a local domestic violence line, someone called in once to report that they ordered a dozen donuts and there was only 11 and the store won't give them another one the next day and their husband is taking it out yelling at the kids. But she didn't want us to talk to her husband but insisted if she could get one donut out the place he would calm down. She had been in and out of the women's shelter so we knew he was a bad person. Well, he got arrested as he wasn't supposed to be there, restraining order, and she called us back. It is a small city org, and was yelling. She just wanted one fucking donut not to see him arrested. A fairly regular emergency for me here in NY State is very young men, usually teenagers or university-age men who have inserted objects up their rectum and cannot retrieve them. Typically carrots, small pumpkins but sometimes also torches, doorknobs or acorns. When you buy an anal toy from adult shop, the toy usually has flanges on one end that prevents the object from getting pulled in beyond the sphincter and disappearing into the rectum where it cannot be reached by fingers. This is a very traumatic and also embarrassing emergency for the young men, and it is also very humiliating way to come out of the closet as gay if they are still living with the parents. I've had people call in for nightmares several times. Can't help you in your sleep, sorry. Caller called because they got their head stuck in a cat tree. With the cat stuck inside with it. Throughout the call I kept hearing like, ow, fuck, and, dude this isn't fun for me either, dude, I know fuck, dude. Caller ended up going to the hospital for a minor case of serious head lacerations. Okay, I don't really know the severity but I'm sure they got some stitches. The other cool thing was that the caller was using an Apple Watch to call 911 because obviously they wouldn't be able to hold the phone to their ear. We get about a dozen misdials from Apple Watches a day. It was nice to finally see one being used for real. Not a 911 operator, but an ex-EMT. Got an unknown call. Arrived on scene. Husband came running at us screaming, chicken breath. Chicken breath. Turned out his wife couldn't breath due to an allergy. Chicken breath will always be referred to as shortness of breath calls. While working my clinicals in the a guy came in with a glass Coke bottle stuck in his ass. Bless his heart. A lady said her baby fell in the toilet. It took me about a minute into the call asking her about the baby's condition until I realized something was off. I asked her, ma'am, did you just give birth to this baby and it fell into the toilet? And she said yes, as if I was supposed to have somehow known that from my baby fell into the toilet. Coworker of mine received a call from a guy standing in front of our police headquarters. Said he was watching people have sex in a car parked on the street. He then decided to tell us he was watching it but that it was disgusting to watch, but he continued to watch. Stated that if we ran lights and sirens to catch them he would turn in his cocaine to make them stop. Somehow or another, the caller started to pleasure himself to them having sex. Oddly enough, happens a fair amount right in front of headquarters. Not me, but my dad. He gets a call from an old lady saying she can't find her husband's gun. He asks, where did you see it last? And she goes, well, I wanted to hide it from my husband, so I put it in the toaster, and then I donated the toaster to a thrift store. So ma'am, you put the gun in the toaster, then donated said toaster to a store? Yes I did. Well ma'am, I can't help you with that. Toaster of doom we like to call it. He caught a raccoon and didn't know what to do next. Then proceeded to freak out when told it is not a police matter. Called back on 911 all day. Wasn't there a video of a lady dialing 911 because Wendy's didn't have chicken nuggets or something like that? 1. Had a guy call because he dyed his pubes and was having an allergic reaction. 2. Woman screaming that an ambulance was following her with their lights on. Spoiler. The ambulance was not following her. 3. Asking the caller for the description of the man she's fighting with, he's ugly. Thanks ma'am, very descriptive. I could go on and on. My caller reported her car stolen. When I asked her when she saw her car for the last time, she replied 1990. Yep, 30 years ago. She seemed unfazed on why I was surprised by her answer. When I was a kid, I called 911 a couple times and hung up because I had learned about it at school and wanted to teach my baby sister. The cops came out because of the multiple hang-ups. They were nice. My mom was annoyed. It's a cute story in our family. Not a dispatcher but a neighbor of mine who was off his meds called 911 about a duck threatening him. Police arrived because ducks are mean and can fuck you up. Dude was in his porch trying to leave but the dick kept honking at him and flapping like a madman. Police arrived and they saw the lone duck bullying the old man and then about a couple dozen in the backyard, which was close to a small lake, munching on bread. Turns out he kept forgetting he fed the ducks and kept coming outside to throw more bread. Either the lone duck wanted more bread or he was trying to stop the man from overfeeding him, I'll never know. I called the non-emergency police line once for my across-the-way neighbor playing Christmas music at all hours for 7 months straight. Turns out I live next to a deaf building and the person had no idea that their music was 1, playing 24/7 and 2, so loud I could hear it in any room of my apartment across the driveway. The operator was absolutely cracking up because I was like, look, it's July, I can't take hearing Holy Night again. The call back I got when they made contact with the person was absolutely hilarious. The cop couldn't stop chuckling every few words. S42, Indecent Exposure, going down 75. Dude was getting a blowy while driving and the caller was describing both of them. My trainer at the time was an elderly man, he was a beast, and he had to keep muting himself from laughing. The officers on the other side of the radio were audibly losing their shit as well as the descriptions kept on coming. My uncle was a dispatcher in Chicago. He used to laugh at people who called 911 in blizzards because someone took the spot they dug out on the public street. Parking spaces are SRS business in Chicago winter. I'm not a 911 operator, but things tend to go to hell when an Amber Alert is issued during a hockey game. When I still got EMT call texts for my little hometown, they would come in with like a 3 to 5 word description of the call. My favorite was, "Man stuck in mud." There are way too many to choose from, but the first one that came to mind was a male in his 20s-30s calling the police on his father because he was being unreasonable and refusing to go to church. Any call where you think you have a dead body and try to start CPR only to realize the caller was hallucinating. The whole thing is right up there, though. The stories, I mean, not laughing at the person for likely having a mental illness and needing help. This story sounds made up, but multiple students I trust, the teacher, and school admin have all confirmed it to me. A teacher at the school I teach at dialed 911 during class. He just happened to be teaching his chemistry class how to make meth while he did so. Apparently he didn't realize it until the office called into his room and asked him to come to the receptionist's desk because there was a cop there, responding to his call. He got the cop to cuff him, walk him back into his classroom, and say, "This is why you don't even think about making meth."